Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's show. This week, we've got Joseph Nunwa on the show. He's a broadcast evangelist with expertise in video distribution. And this week, I believe we want to talk about the complexities of IP over the internet for linear TV contribution. Is that right, Joseph?
That's right. Ben, thanks for having me on. It's great to see you again. I feel like the first time we met was back in September 2009 when we both started
The
our
same
Kiva on the
day.
same day.
Same
Yeah.
day. How
That's
we've
12
grown, right?
how we've grown. Like, I've grown loads of grey hair since then. I'm starting to forget people's names. I,
I
I
know.
groan. I groan whenever I bend over to pick something up.
And just to point out, we started in operations, but we've gone a very different route, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
But we're here
so
today.
from those days of operations through to sort of architecture in contribution. So, what's the why use the internet as a method for TV contribution, Joseph?
It's a good question, and so let me frame it a bit just by saying when we talk about contribution, both contribution and distribution, they're almost used interchangeably in the industry, depending on who you're talking to, where they sit within the broadcast chain. But for this topic, we're talking about B2B transport of linear live TV from your source provider, your content owner, the service provider, to
That's
your
business to business, B2B. Yeah,
business to business,
yeah,
yeah, from
yeah.
your source provider, your content provider, or your service provider to your affiliates, your broadcasters, and onwards. So we're not talking about direct to consumer. We're talking about the bit before direct to consumer, where you're essentially making your channel service available to your customers globally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so then I guess, well, if the question is why the internet, I guess the reversal of that is why not, right? Because we've seen one half of the industry, and this is the direct to consumer half of the industry. We've seen that the internet is used heavily over the last many years to reach consumers. We've all got devices, we've all got iPhones, iPads. Got to big up the Android fans, right? We've all got Android devices, and to consume media today, it leverages the internet. Many platforms, apps will use a CDN to get content to their customers, to get content to consumers. But upstream of that, it's always been there's always been hesitation around using the internet for contribution. There's always been, we're going to use satellite, we're going to use direct point to point fiber to get our channels from business to business. So the real question is, hey, why are we completely okay and comfortable with using the internet to get to our devices, but we're not completely comfortable in using the internet in a slightly upstream to that, right?
Yeah, well,
So
is the internet not like the Wild West, and it's sort of creaking at the seams, right?
so that so the internet is being made out to be this big, publicly open, scary, you don't really know where your data is going thing. And the reality is, it is right. It is open. You don't really know where your data is going. You don't really know what path it's taking to get to its destination. And there's always been concerns around when video goes over the internet. There's always been concerns around latency, security, and reliability. And those challenges have been solved on the direct to consumer side with HLS and uh, Epic Dash and protocols that are directed for consumer devices. But on the contribution side, it's always been a big thing, right? Because you want to maintain as much quality in the signal as possible on the contribution side, because often downstream to contribution, it's retranscoded, the videos manipulated again. So you tend to lose a bit of quality in that process. So it's important that you maintain quality. It's important that you maintain latency and you maintain your security. And all those things have been concerns for broadcasters, service providers, content owners when it comes to contributing live video over the internet. However, we, we've 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 definitely seen improvements to protocols and technologies and the use of publicly available cloud services like virtualizations help significantly. The use of commodity hardware now means that um, software can be deployed a lot easier, a lot more cost effectively at the edge and locally to deploy services that that are able to distribute or contribute live linear channels at scale. So there's many technical benefits of using IP video distribution over the internet. It's not just technical benefits, there's business and service benefits. We found that quicker time to market. So where we had a real legacy wait, where if you wanted to launch a service or channel on satellite, you need to go through the whole process of engagement, defining your requirements, scoping it out, speaking to vendors, getting quotes back, raising a PO, going through that whole process. And that could take up to sort of 6 to 8 weeks, right?
Well, that's the longest lead time. Like, as the industry knows, doing the sort of circuits and distribution and contribution stuff, that was the longest lead time. So is that drastically reduced by using the internet then?
Significantly reduced, right? So depending on how you use the internet, depending on what protocols you use, depending on what platform you use, whether you're just running commodity hardware with some software in it, or whether you're using, I don't know, Amazon AWS service to run it, it's dropped those times drastically from anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks, depending on whatever satellite or fiber network you have set up, straight down to, I mean, you're talking hours now. And I know it's a cliche to say it's dropped it down to hours, but I've actually deployed services to customers in hours. From point of this needs to be done to the point of this is done and it's now documented, it's been hours. So not only the quicker time to market, but the lower upfront costs, right? There's no heavy investment in infrastructure. There's no heavy investment in costs for an individual service, which means when you really scale, it gets super expensive. And given the speed in which technology and protocols are changing at the moment, like no one really wants to invest heavily in equipment or kit that, hey, in a year or two's time, there's something better out there. There's something that's giving your competitors an advantage that you can't get to because you've got a massive sunken cost in this kit that you've procured. And then just the commercial flexibility you get, like because you're now able to use publicly available cloud services to contribute your services of IP over the internet, it then means that you're able to leverage pay-as-you-go type models. You're able to leverage a better commercial terms with your technology provider or your service provider, which then means you're able to ensure that your contracts to your customers are a bit more flexible commercially, and you're able to offer things that you couldn't necessarily offer before, maybe pop-up channels, spin-up channels, shorter notice periods.
I was going to mention the pop-up stuff, and it seems very agile then, Joseph, right?
Completely agile. Yeah, we've done a lot around. You've seen in the industry a lot of an increase in those quick turnaround pop-up channels or occasional use type events where they will use the internet as their primary means of contribution, just because it's, hey, spin it up now, spin it back, tear it back down tomorrow. We only pay for what we use. You can't really beat that, right?
Special events basically and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
special events.
I mean, all that sounds great, Joseph, but there must be some sort of complexity in there and challenges, right? What are they?
No, absolutely. So depending on which way you come at it, if you come at it from a technical perspective, then there's a whole challenge around, as I mentioned, how do you keep latency low when streaming over the internet? Because the thing about the internet is when you distribute packets over the internet, your normal communication over the internet, when you use your web browser, you go onto Chrome, you're going to hit a website. The usual communication is TCP communication, which is a connection orientated protocol, which means the sender and receiver have a connection. They can talk to each other. They can acknowledge that things have been missed. It's very reliable and secure and accurate, but it does mean that it's a timely protocol. There's massive delays in that whole sequence of events, but normally those delays are not too much of a concern. If you're on your browser, you don't mind waiting the extra second for a page to load. But for video, we tend to use UDP, which is a connectionless protocol, which is literally fire and forget. Your sender will fire video packets out as IP, and it doesn't really matter whether they get to the destination. It doesn't know if it gets to the destination. It's just firing out a sequence of packets. And that UDP video distribution works great within your own sort of closed network, within your own facility, because it means that you manage that network. you know that packets are not really going to be dropped, or if they are dropped, they're dropped in small numbers. But over the internet, where you don't manage the internet, you don't really know what path it's going to take. Your packet 1, 2, and 3 might go this way. Packet 4, 5, and 6 might go that way. Packet 7 might get dropped. When you don't have that, then you find there's protocols, modern protocols, I say, like ZigZee, RIST, SRT, that are in place to help securely and reliably distribute packets over the internet. So what they leverage techniques like ARQ, which is automatic repeat request. That essentially means that there is a level of connection and acknowledgement between sender and receiver, and there's buffers at each side, which means your sender always keeps packets that is sent for a certain period. Your receiver will also keep a buffer of packets that are coming in. When packets are missed, it will put it in the tray, request that the packets come again, it will come again, and it'll play it out. So there's always going to be an element, a playoff between your latency versus your the amount of reliability you want. If you increase if you say, you know what, I don't care about latency, I don't mind having 10 seconds, 20 seconds latency, then you can have super reliability, right? Because what you're basically saying is in that 20 seconds of latency, it gives you 20 seconds to correct any packets that have been missed, which is a long time over the internet when round trip times can be quite quick. Some of the protocols also use FEC, which is something we've seen heavily in the satellite space. And then obviously you've got from the security side, you've got the encryption and AES, and deploying these all together can be challenging. And this is where we've seen a lot of the challenges, right? So we've now got a massive change happening within the industry. We're now seeing new ways to contribute video, new ways to distribute video. We're seeing service providers trying to keep up with the constant how do they build this new technology into their protocols to give their customers the best cost-effective and reliable services possible. So they're also trying to solve these challenges. How do we bring in this new protocols? We want to deploy something that can support these new protocols because that's what our customers want. They're reliable, but we want to ensure it's secure. But how do we monitor it operationally? We've got this old MCR, this old legacy equipment and teams.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that, because if it's business to business, there must be some quality of service. So the clients must be expecting a certain service quality level, right?
Absolutely, and that's again, this comes into, which is exactly the topic we're on, is some of the complexities. Some of the complexities around contributing video to the internet are not just technical complexities. We find that a lot of the complexities also come with discussions with local authorities around old regulations, but more to your point, discussions with your internal teams, your legal teams, to help to help everyone understand that this is a different type of service. Where before you'd go to a service provider, you would get an SLA for a service, it'll be a managed service. This is slightly different, right? That a service provider can't guarantee your video over the internet. No one can really guarantee it over the internet. So therefore, the SLA you're going to have is not going to be a traditional SLA. Hey, if my service is impacted, then this is the service level agreement that you breached, and therefore that could invoke financial compensation.
Yeah.
How do you put an SLA on the internet? So that whole model changes, and that changes some of the discussions that companies will have with their legal departments, in their terms and agreements with service providers. Because then if you can't put an SLA on a major part of the transport of that service, then given all the pros that you get from the service, do you say, okay, you know what, I can't put the SLA on there, but do I then ensure that we have tighter, more stringent processes in place when there is an issue? This is how quick you must report. This is exactly what must be monitored. This is how we share and get information out when there is an issue in a timely manner. Do you focus more on those elements? And I think that's what we've seen an increase of within the industry is, hey, we all know the risks of putting video over the internet.
Yeah,
we are using it.
And what about the skills? Is there a skills gap, or is it open source? Do the affiliates and the broadcasters all have to sort of have the same sort of base set of skills to put this stuff in?
Now, again, skills gap is a major challenge, and it's a good point that you raised, Ben, because to deploy these services, typically what you would have in a load of media organizations is you would have your network team. They would work very differently to your sort of broadcast and video teams. They obviously work together, but they're very separate. But then what you have now is you have IP over the internet, which is very networky. And a lot of those network teams and groups are not used to or familiar with actually moving video 24/7, has to get to its destination reliably. So a drop packet to a network engineer that's mainly been focused on sort of building networks, not focused on video, might not see that as a big thing. So there is a massive skill gap or skill set change that needs to happen when you're deploying services that are using the internet, because it's that blend of you need to have expertise in video, and you need to know at a video level how to troubleshoot. But again, you also need to have that network understanding, and you need to bring those two things together. So that's why we also find that it's important that every single element of every single team or department involved when deploying IP services over the internet are essentially not trained, but educated to the fact that this is a different type of service, and how it's monitored is different, how the agreement's going to look is different, how we present it to our customers is different, how issues are handled is different. So the whole package is different, and some of just the complexities in that's a hard challenge to have when you're in an organization that's wanting the change and everyone's on board with the change. Just going through those processes, that's major complexity just in itself.
And the same famous battle between broadcast and IT, right? And so like how do you foresee IP contribution over the internet changing then, say in the next sort of 1 to 3 years?
It's definitely going to increase. If you go back to help predict the next 1 to 3 years, if you go back 1 to 3 years from now, you would go back sort of 3-4 years from now, or 3-4 years previously, you found that a lot of content owners, those responsible for distributing over the internet, they were using the internet as a tertiary service or as a backup/DR service to what would be their primary contribution, so their fiber lines and satellite. What we find now is it's actually used quite predominantly as a primary source of distribution. And I can only foresee that increasing over time. In terms of linear distribution, that obviously we know how linear has changed within the industry over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's going to continue to change. And so as linear changes, then the contribution mechanisms around linear will also change, and this is one of them. And what I see is as linear changes, this would obviously change, but the customers or those that are wanting to go over the internet will adopt this very quickly, simply because of the flexibility and agility that IP over the internet provides you. It means that it gives you that ability to make a decision fast as a business, and actually to reap the savings or rewards quickly, and not have to be contractually tied into any large, long agreements that could be financially damaging to you when you make a change as an organization.
Because we've always seen, haven't we, the sort of like the maybe the smaller, more nimble sort of broadcasters, a bit more willing to take a bit of risk. But then it just grows confidence in the industry by saying, look at all these people doing it, right?
Yeah. Exactly, and that's really what's helped. And I know we've got IBC coming up in just under a month from now, and you're going to see then each IBC, each NAB you go to, and you speak to people, and you network and engage, you find that you're hearing a lot more conversations that are revolved around people taking that, or organizations taking that risk to use the internet for their primary contribution, and that's a great thing. And the OU business has adopted that years and years ago. So it's actually great to see people using it now on a 24/7 basis with trust, because it helps us all. As the more people move over to it and want to use it, the more the service provider gets familiar with it, the more the package and offer that service providers have are more compelling, more competitive. So overall, it's a great thing.
And then you'll be spinning stuff up in minutes, right, Joseph?
Spinning stuff in minutes. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I'd just like to say thanks, Joseph, for that wonderful insight on sort of IP contribution. It's been great having you on the show. If you want to catch Joseph on LinkedIn, then go ahead and find him. That's Joseph Nunwa on LinkedIn. So, thank you, Joseph. And no doubt I'll see you at IBC.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Ben. Cheers.
Take care, Joseph. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.